It's time to have that talk. 1 week ago, Ash and Iron dropped. It's been kind of gotten the moniker of Ass and Iron. And yeah, I can't say I disagree, unfortunately. It's not just the update in and of itself that's really lackluster and frankly bad, but it's also just the overall state of the game. It's like that unfortunately perfect combo where not only the update is bad, but also the overall state of the game is bad. You know, we just got to talk about it. And I don't necessarily want to talk about this for the purposes of just dumping on it, but hopefully talk about it in a way where we can identify specifically what the problems are and why things feel so bad right now. To figure out where we are right now, I think we kind of have to walk back to Edge of Fate release. And this might be confusing to some people because I was very positive about a lot of the things that came with the Edge of Fate. I was very high hopes when it came to Edge of Fate. I was a big defender of a lot of the things that happened. I still stand by some of them to a certain degree because I think for the longest time, there was a big complaint of we don't just want more Destiny, we want new Destiny. And that was a very valid complaint, right? And so I think what the main goal of Edge of Fate was to bring new Destiny. Like, I think that's the mindset that Bungie had when they were making it. And we can see that because they effectively revamped and overhauled many core systems of the game. Like, most expansions are just like, it's new destination, new campaign, new raid, new stuff, new gear. Whereas Edge of Fate was really different in the sense that, and I know, like, you didn't have to purchase Edge of Fate to have access to these new systems, but development time for the development cycle of Edge of Fate was spent on them, right? You know, we had things like the portal, which the entire point of the portal was to make it easier to get back into or to get into Destiny, because for like a newer returning player, it's very confusing to go to the destinations tab. You don't know what planet you're supposed to go to. You don't know what to, portal makes it very streamlined to like jump in and hop into an activity, whether you think that's like well-designed or not, we'll talk about that in a bit. Gear tiering systems was a gigantic one. Armor set bonuses, was on paper a really big one, but if I'm just being completely honest, the armor set bonuses have not been compelling enough to actually feel like they mean anything significant. Like, when I first saw them talk about armor set bonuses, I thought armor set bonuses were going to be like exotic level functionality. In reality, unfortunately, they give like extra like handling and stability on certain guns, like when your health gets low. The stat rework system was another big one. And so the reason I was so high on Edge of Fate is because the way I viewed Edge of Fate was them in completely revamping the foundation of the game and completely revamping, how we play Destiny and how we engage in Destiny. And unfortunately, they just, like, a lot of these new revamp systems needed a lot of work. They missed the mark on a lot of them, some more than others, right? Power Grind, they missed the mark on big time. Portal, they missed the mark on quite a bit. I would say they hit on gear tiering. I feel like loot is more desirable than it's ever been. However, where they did miss on gear tiering is not adapting the rest of the game to utilize gear tiering, and so as a result, you've effectively soft sunset the entire game because you can't get tiered gear from it, right? You effectively soft sunset every single raid, every single dungeon, every single piece of content that doesn't drop tiered gear. You've basically soft sunset all that stuff. They definitely missed the mark on exotic stat totals. The fact that exotic armor has tier 2 stat bands is crazy to me. The stat rework, they hit the mark, but they also missed the mark, right? They hit the mark in the sense that, like, they shifted it up so that not every single build is just resilience followed by your class stat followed by discipline. But they also missed the mark when it comes to, like, armor archetypes being limiting so that you literally cannot get certain stat combinations, which makes certain builds, like, significantly less possible, I guess, if that makes sense. The reason I was a big defender of all of these things and a big defender of the Edge of Fate early on is because I appreciated that they were trying to give us new Destiny instead of just more Destiny. And I was defending them under the assumption that they knew that all of these systems are brand new and we're going to need a lot of tweaks and we're going to need a lot of work to be in a place where they felt very, very good. I was under the assumption that they were going to be very quick and very focused on feedback and kind of have a mindset of, we know that this is not perfect and anywhere near perfect. So we are looking at you, the player base, to tell us where it's not perfect. And we're going to, like, number one priority is going to be to make things better ASAP, right? And so the reason my mindset has shifted a little bit, where I was like very hopeful early on Edge of Fate, and now I'm feeling really like not good, is because the pace of reworking and modifying and tweaking these systems into a place where they are genuinely extremely enjoyable is not moving nearly fast enough. And what's even more concerning is that the direction that we've been going is not even like the right direction most of the time. In fact, in a lot of situations, we go the wrong direction, and then the entire community is like, no, what are you doing? And like, it takes like a week of going the wrong direction and like tons of feedback and tons of like, no, don't do that, for us to even just revert to get back to square one, let alone to go in the right direction, right? With the reveal stream, credit where it's due, they announced a couple of things that are going in the right direction. But my frustration is that, and I'm sure the frustration of many, is it's getting to feel like a too little too late situation. It's really frustrating as a player to feel like whenever you want something in the game improved, that you first have to wait for them to do something that's completely in the wrong direction, and then scream that it's in the wrong direction just to get back to square one, and then you have to scream even more to get it to go in the right direction, and it's so exhausting. This doesn't mean that I'm advocating for bad feedback, because I don't think that that's going to help us at all. Like, I don't think that's a good justification for like, oh, well, let's just start giving, like, being really mean with our feedback and being really rude. However, I understand and can wrap my head around why so many people are taking that approach, because they're just tired. They're exhausted. They're basically at the point right now where they're like, dude, like, I can't anymore. And I get it. Like, the human psyche can only go through so many instances of, yo, this is what we want. And then for Bungie to do the exact opposite. I'll always give feedback from a constructive and respectful and civil manner. And I think everyone else should aim to do that too, to the best of their ability, because I think that's the best way to get things implemented, and that's the best way to be heard. But like Bungie, like I wish Bungie would help us out when the community was being as crystal clear as humanly possible about the portal changes and the power grind changes and stuff like that, not wanting to spam solo ops over and over again and wanting other activities to be more rewarding. That was the easiest layup ever. It really was. And I don't mean any disrespect to Bungie or anything like that, but like, I'm gonna call a spade a spade. That was the easiest layup ever. When you feel like the community feedback is crystal clear and unanimous, and you still go the opposite direction, I can understand why people like look at that and they're like, well, whatever. Clearly what I say doesn't matter. Clearly they're not listening to me. Why even bother giving feedback? Now I'm just going to be frustrated. And now, like, I get it. And so it's like, issue number one with the current game is like, listen, we completely reworked Destiny from the ground up, right? We completely changed all the foundational systems. The whole game is very different now. The pursuits in the game are very different. A lot of the systems in the game are very different. That's good. I don't want to play another 10 years where the expansion comes out, I grind 10 power levels, I run around the destination a little bit, and then there's nothing to do in the destination. I do the raid a couple times. I don't want to do that for another 10 years. So like, I can appreciate that they tried to do something new, and that's why I was so high on it. But now I'm at the point where it's like, okay, time's up. Not enough has been done, and not enough communication has been had, and not enough acknowledgement of the problems has been had for me to be in a spot now where I'm like, okay, I understood things were not going to be perfect on the first pass. Now it's like, okay, we have not had enough movement. We have not had enough momentum. And that's kind of how I was for the past couple weeks. And then we had the reveal stream, and I was like, whoa, Renegades looks decent, right? Renegades looks pretty good. I am also a Star Wars fan, though. Maybe that contributes to it. But I think Renegades looks pretty good. And then they talked about a lot of the quality of life changes, live game changes that they had planned. A lot of them were good. I wish their plans on them were more concrete. Like, the sense of urgency didn't really feel like it was there, and that was a little bit frustrating for me. But I was at least thinking to myself, well, they're talking about it now, and it seems like they have a decent grasp on what our qualms are. That seems good. And then Ash and Iron drops, and it just murdered all the momentum. I saw a comment, I think it was on one of my shorts, where someone said that the Plague Lands is a great microcosm of the current state of Destiny, where it has this really cool and good solid foundation, but that foundation is not being optimized or built upon to create something that could be truly great. And I thought that was odd. Like I thought that was a very astute assessment of the current state of the game, right? Because you think the Plague Lands, when they first announced that it would come back, I was hyped. I loved the Plague Lands. It's one of my favorite destinations in the history of Destiny. You've got all this like red Siva everywhere. There's lava all over the place. You had Archon's Forge. I thought it was such a cool destination. Like from a foundational perspective, the Plague Lands is amazing. But the way it was implemented in Destiny 2, I don't even understand why they brought it back. Not only are there not Siva enemies, there's no Siva anywhere. There's no lava anywhere. The destination literally feels dead. The best word I can use to describe it is the Plague Lands feels dead. And not in a good way. Not in like, oh wow, they were going for like a dead aesthetic here. They were going for like this barren wasteland. Like, it doesn't feel dead in that way. It doesn't feel dead in like an artistic sense. The Plague Lands has nothing that made the Plague Lands feel like the Plague Lands, which even further just makes a player who played back in those days and liked the Plague Lands, it just further makes you feel like they're just kind of like nostalgia baiting you a little bit. Because when I look at something like the Plague Lands, I'm just sat there, like Destiny 2 Plague Lands actually, I'm sat there looking at it and just thinking to myself, like, why not use a new destination? And furthermore, it's not even a destination. It's just a reused asset for 4 portal activities. So I heard this the other day. Tell me if this is true or not. It's not even 4 different portal activities. It's actually 1 portal activity, but the 4 different portal nodes, the only difference between them is where you start. Is that actually true? It just feels odd. It feels really odd. And so like we've had this joke where I'm not even calling them the Plague Lands. I've just been calling them the lands. And I still can't get over it. Like the Plague Lands are a microcosm, or the Destiny 2 Plague Lands feel like a microcosm of current Destiny. That comment was like a week ago. I haven't been able to get it out of my head. All of the system changes that were made in the Edge of Fate, genuinely, from a foundational perspective, like, it's good bones. It's good architecture. It's good structure. But you gotta fill it in with furniture. And I defended it so much at the beginning because I was under the understanding that they were going to try to fill it with furniture very quickly. The portal/power grind. Let's talk about the portal first, right? The updates that were made to the portal, obviously we had the reclaim activities coming in Ash and Iron, and then we had dungeon layers, which on paper sounded like a good thing, right? One of the biggest complaints of the portal was that there's not enough content to do on the portal. And the legacy content in the game, all of the raid content in the game, all the current dungeon content in the game, doesn't really feel like there's a good reason to do them because you can't get tiered gear through that stuff. Which is why it is the most confusing thing I have seen, and I don't even know how long when it comes to Destiny, that they added dungeon layers to the portal. And they put tiered gear in the dungeon layers, but you cannot get tiered versions of the dungeon-specific loot from the dungeon layers. So like, you can't get tiered Pit of Heresy gear. You can't get tiered Duality gear. I do not understand why at all. Like, I know technically you can still use the old gear if you want to, but we're living in the era of gear tiers, okay? Which means anything that is not tiered automatically feels inferior to anything that is tiered. If you have tier 5 gear and untiered gear, you want to use the tier 5 gear all day, every day. Just let us get tiered versions of the old dungeon gear. I understand that it's not so simple as like snap your fingers, okay, all the old gear is tiered now, especially for armor, right? Because to bring armor into the gear tiering system, you need to add armor set bonuses to the armor. So I get that that takes a while. I do not develop Destiny 2, so maybe it is, but I'm just posing the question, is it that difficult to make it so that I can get a tier 5 Storm Chaser, the linear fusion rifle from Duality? But I'm just, it's important. It's important to players right now. Because when you have the choice between getting tier 5 gear and untiered gear, any content that gives untiered gear versus tier 5 gear is automatically less desirable to play. I used to be a dev for 5 years. Not a game dev specifically, but I did software development for 5 years. So I understand that when it comes to development and coding, everything is easier said than done. And I understand that there are going to be bugs. There will always be bugs. But The amount of bugs that have been in the game for the past couple of updates is not acceptable. Not that I think that Bungie thinks that they are acceptable. When you are consistently having this many bugs and this many things broken for this many consecutive releases, you're kind of sending the message, whether you intend to or not, that you're okay with a lot of things in the game being bugged. My understanding is that the QA department got laid off. And so as much, I know I can't just sit here in armchair dev and be like, we'll just hire more QA testers. The amount of bugs in the game has gotten so bad that when it comes to like damage testing weapons or making new builds, I don't know what's a bug or not anymore. Like a great example is the Tempest Strike working with combination blow, but it was actually bugged to where Tempest Strike would not actually proc combination blow and increment your stack and refund your dodge unless you had recently damaged the enemy before killing them with Tempest Strike. It's getting to the point where like when I go to make builds, there have been multiple builds that I want to make that I can't even make because one of the aspects of it is bugged, and I don't want to make a build video on it because I want to wait until they fix the bug before I make the build video. It is an unacceptable amount of bugs. It just feels like every update is just more bugs, more bugs, more bugs, more bugs. And I get it that Destiny is a very complex game. I get that bugs aren't as simple as like snap your fingers and oh, well, the bugs are gone. The game costs too much money to play and it's too polished of a product, or at least it's been too polished of a product historically, where every single update we go into, there's like question marks as to whether or not things are working properly. Another good example is when Ash and Iron launched, and I think it was like if you were 450 power or higher, you literally weren't getting power increased drops. And I was literally sitting there and I was like, okay, I don't know if it's a bug that I'm not getting power increased drops right now, or if I didn't get my score high enough to actually earn the increase of the power drop, right? And that's a problem when something happens in a game and you don't know if it's because you actually didn't do what you were supposed to do or if it's because it's bugged. Another thing too, when it comes to power in the portal, it's way too complicated. All the modifiers you have to slap on, you know, all like the B+, the A+, the Diamond 3, the Diamond 2, Platinum, Gold, blah, blah. It's so complicated. I don't know what the solution to this is off the top of my head because the point of the portal was to streamline the Destiny experience to make it more understandable for new and returning players because the idea of the destinations tab is very confusing. But making people apply 6 of their own modifiers and trying to figure out if they need a B+ or an A or a B-. Well, if they're 400, they need a B+, but if they're 400, they need an A, and if they're 450, they need an A+. It's like, that's insanely complicated just in a different way. The way the game functions when it comes to power grinding effectively is if you want to grind power level and you want to get a powerful drop from an activity, you're trying to strike this balance between you have to slap on a ton of annoying stuff to get your score up, but it's annoying and it's not fun to play with. So the challenge of power grinding is just trying to slap on the least annoying stuff that gives the most points. The intention is good, where it's like, hey, we want you to be able to curate and customize your experiences. However, it's not that simple. What it actually is, it's a, hey, we want you to play the way that you want to play, but if you want to make progress in the game, then it's actually not the way you want to play. You have to throw on a ton of annoying stuff that limits the way you play, actually. And it's felt even worse with the locked loadout changes, where locked loadout multiplied your score by like 4 green arrows, and now it only multiplies it by 2, because they wanted to hard push avant-garde even more, which even further limits how you want to play. Now, credit where it's due, them making all exotics featured and available to use for avant-garde when it comes to renegades. That is a good thing. But I'm kind of at the point right now where I'm like, dude, like, why are we even doing the avant-garde thing anymore? Why are we even doing the new gear thing anymore? It feels like we're just baby stepping our way to the inevitable conclusion of like, you know what? Use what you want to use. Which, isn't that the whole point of Destiny? Hasn't that always been the entire point of Destiny? That you can play the way you want. You can use whatever you want. You can use whatever build you want. That was one of the frustrations with champions back in the day, was that for specific seasons, you literally had to use a certain weapon archetype because you just had to match the lock and key system of whatever the champion was. And one of the single greatest updates that was ever made to Destiny 2 was making it so that subclass verbs could stun champions, because what that allowed you to do was it actually allowed you to use the weapons that you wanted to use in content with champions. You could, instead of having to use that specific weapon, you could get by with having a subclass ability that allowed you to stun that champion instead, and just open the door for way more variety when it came to build crafting for champion-based content, which was most, it was, you know, Master Raids, Grandmaster Nightfalls, it was most endgame content. And it feels like with the portal, they've kind of gone back to like, wait, hold up, if yes, you can technically use whatever you want, but if you want enough points to be able to power grind, to be able to progress, to be able to get tier 5 stuff, then you actually have to put on modifiers that limit what you're allowed to use. It's like, that's extremely frustrating. I also think Destiny Rising has thrown things for a significant loop. And I'm not a mobile gamer. I've played Destiny Rising a little bit. I'll probably continue to play it, like, you know, a couple times a month. I was not expecting Destiny Rising to be as good as it was, especially when compared to actual Destiny. Like, basically what's been going on is every day I look at Twitter, or I look at, you know, YouTube, or I look at this forum or that forum, and I would see a new feature or a new thing in Destiny Rising that made me look at it and be like, whoa, wait a minute, that's actually a really good feature. Why don't we have that in actual Destiny? And it took me like 2 weeks of seeing this, where I eventually got to the point where I thought to myself, I was like, whoa, hold up, wait. So you're telling me Destiny Rising has Sparrow Racing, it has clan housing, it has this, it has that, it has engram stacking, it has like all of these things where I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. How is Destiny Rising, a mobile game that has been out for a couple of weeks, out Destinying real Destiny? They figured out a way to make Gambit fun. And I don't want to compare Destiny Rising to PC Destiny too much, because they are very different games, right? The build crafting elements are extremely different. It's Guardian specific, right? Your Guardian determines what archetypes of weapons you're allowed to use, and your skills are mostly preset for you. Whereas in Destiny, the build crafting is much more open-ended. You can put on whatever exotic armor piece you want. You can put on whatever weapons you want. You can put on whatever mods you want, right? They're more different than they are similar, to be completely honest. They just feel a lot more similar than they are different, because they're both Destiny. But the amount of features and quality of life things and ancillary systems like clan housing and stuff like that there are in Destiny Rising, it's just, you know, you kind of like Destiny Rising did more to encourage you to be in a clan on release than Destiny or Destiny 2 have done in their 11 years of existence. And don't get me wrong, it's not, you know, it's not like clan housing is the end all be all, but it's frustrating to see that as a Destiny player, because it hurts to see a different developer do the things that you want with your game into a different game. Because then you're just sat there and you're like, well, wait, why can't we have this in our game? You know what I mean? And I know they've made changes, and I know they've announced changes, but like for the most part, we're what, 2 months out now from the release of Edge of Fate, I think, right? It was July 15th. The power grind in the portal system is mostly the same. We still have mostly the same problems. We still have mostly the same problems with new gear restrictions and avant-garde restrictions. We still have mostly the same problems with legacy content not feeling like it's worth playing. Old raids feeling like they're not worth playing. Old dungeons feeling like they're not worth playing. I know they've said that they're going to do things, and some small tweaks have been made, and I've been applauding them for their small tweaks, because I believe in, you know, when they go in the direction that you want them to go in, you gotta let them know. Otherwise, how do they know that they're actually going in the direction that you want them to go in? But it's been 2 months, and I'm like, just, you know, cut and dry. It's not enough. It has not been enough. I have no doubt that they will get these systems into a very, very good spot. Just the concern, though, is time. There is a big difference getting them into a good spot 3 months from now, when we hit the release of Renegades, versus 2 months from now in preparation for the release of Renegades. My biggest concern right now is it feels like when it comes to live game fixes and updating these core foundational systems to make them feel a lot better, it feels like they're planning all of these changes to happen throughout the Renegades expansion. Whereas in my mind, I'm sitting here thinking like, no, Renegades is your opportunity to show players how much you've improved these systems and how much better they are for when they return. Because I'd imagine most people probably bought the Year of Prophecy edition or the $80 version to get Edge of Fate and Renegades. So most people that played Edge of Fate and bought Edge of Fate and have left the game since Edge of Fate probably already paid for Renegades and will probably log on for at the very least week 1 of Renegades. I'm not just saying like baby steps and moving in the right direction. I'm saying getting into a place where they feel good, where they feel really, 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 really good. It's this instance right now, so that when Renegades does release, the people who left Edge of Fate, because these core foundational systems were not hitting, they come back and try out week 1 of Renegades, and they're like, oh wow, they actually like fixed a lot of this stuff. It feels way better. There's way more stuff to do in the portal. There's a good reason to play past raids. There's a good reason to play past dungeons. The best way to grind is with friends. The best way to grind is by doing a variety of content instead of spamming the same exact activity over and over again. The game feels like it has way less bugs. The time to do, like, it's now. Renegades is the time where you get to go, check it out. We told you we were listening. This is proof of that. We told you we were fixing everything. Boom, right here. We told you we were making everything better. Boom, right here. Day 1 when you log into Renegades, look at how much better everything is. I completely understand that a lot of the changes that might be necessary might not be feasible in that time span. It is what it is. Game development takes a while. Unfortunately, time is no longer a luxury that the Destiny community is willing to afford Bungie. And I can't say I blame them. I love this game so much, and I still do firmly believe that a lot of these systems have so much potential to be incredible and make the game so good long term, make the game so much better long term than it used to be. And I will always be here to give feedback civilly and respectfully. Nothing I said whatsoever was meant disrespectfully. Y'all know me, I'm not about that. I don't think that that's constructive. At the end of the day, still love the game, but it is not feeling good to play at the current moment, and I hope it gets figured out so that it does feel good to play as soon as possible.